Welcome back to the MOOC course on corporate social responsibility. My name is Aradhana Malik and I'm helping you with this course, and we have been discussing various aspects of the stakeholder theory of management and its connection with CSR. So today we will continue with that discussion, and today we are going to talk about the perspectives of stakeholder theory as they appear in literature. How is stakeholder theory viewed in different contexts by different researchers and its implications for CSR in the corporate world. So let's see what we have here. Now the basis for stakeholder theory are the very purpose of the firm is to serve as a vehicle for coordinating stakeholder interests. Now this is the very basis. Evan and Freeman cite this, and they are the ones who talk about it, and Donaldson and Preston have talked about it in their papers. So they say that the firm exists to serve stakeholders, to fulfill the interests of stakeholders. If the stakeholders, thereby implying that if the stakeholders were not there, the firm would not have existed. So the reason for the existence of the firm is the stakeholders, and that is why it is the responsibility of the firm to cater to the interests of the stakeholders. Now this stakeholder theory is based on the social contract theory, which states that the expectations of the society that we live in are a result of the contract that binds us to that society. So the context that binds us excuse me, the context that binds us to the society is something that we have decided. We form the society, we establish a relationship with the society, and in doing so, in establishing a relationship with the society, we form a bond with the society, and when we form that bond is governed by certain rules. So the social contract theory says that when we form that bond, we lay a foundation for the society to expect something from us, and this context then decides what the society expects us to do in exchange for letting us be a part of it. Okay, so that is the social contract theory. Excuse me. All right. So social contract theory states that we are bound to the society by virtue of certain expectations, and the society lets us be a part of it in exchange for what we do for it. That is the social contract theory. And when we talk about social contract and stakeholders and CSR and the connection of these three, we understand that the analysis of corporation stakeholder relations leads us to the definition of hyper norms, macro and micro social contracts. It is this relationship that we share with the society that determines what those norms are, what contracts are formed. So it's an ongoing iterative process. Social responsibility is expressed through stakeholder relations and defines corporate existence. So the relationship we have with the society then determines what type of social contract we have, and that in turn determines what kind of responsibility we have to the society. And stakeholder theory rests on these relations. That contract decides who the stakeholders are, what they can expect from the society, what the society should be expecting from them. So the contract then decides, the relationship between the stakeholders and the society forms the basis of the social contract, and this social contract then determines what expectations, further stakeholders or how stakeholders are identified, and the social responsibility is expressed through these relationships. So once a relationship is formed, some expectations are set, and the fulfillment of those expectations then becomes the social responsibility, or that becomes the expression of the social responsibility, and that in turn defines how the corporate organization becomes a part of the society it exists in. So that is the connection of these three concepts. Okay, stakeholder CSR perspectives based on stakeholder firm relationship. We are talking about the relationship between stakeholders and firm and society. Now, how do we do CSR? You know, there are various ways of doing CSR, and these perspectives are, the following perspectives are based on the relationship between stakeholders and the firms. So there are three broad types of perspectives that are being talked about, and one is the utilitarian perspective, the other is the managerial perspective, and the third is the relational perspective. Let's see what these are. The utilitarian perspective talks about the social cost. You know, what does it cost? What is the function of this relationship? What does this relationship do for stakeholders? What does this relationship do for the firm? And how can these relationships be maintained, and what is the output, what is the function, and in order to maintain that relationship, what are the activities that need to be carried out? So when we talk about CSR from the utilitarian perspective, we say, okay, what do we need to do to maintain the relationship between the stakeholders and society? So a pharmaceutical company has been set up in a far-flung area or on the outskirts of the city, and in a neighborhood where people don't have enough jobs, where their land is taken away from them. So from a utilitarian perspective, this has been set up, this has taken over their land. Now what should this do for the people? What should the output be? The output should be something that justifies its existence in that society. So they say, okay, we make medicines, we will give you free medicines, or we will give you medicines at subsidized rates in exchange for letting us be a part of this milieu that we are in. So the utility, what kind of activity will justify their existence? It's just a very plus minus kind of game here. From the managerial perspective, CSR becomes corporate social performance. So social accountability, auditing, reporting, social responsibility of multinationals, all of these come in the managerial perspective. What do the managers do to keep up the to report that the right things are being done? So the accountability is there. Who is responsible in the firm? Who is responsible for looking after the activities? Then what kinds of reports do they bring out? So the focus becomes on the reports, on keeping the people who are viewing the reports happy, or on keeping the beneficiaries of those reports satisfied. What do they want to see in reports? And we do the activities that will make sure that the reports become acceptable to the stakeholders, to the people who are going to be looking at those reports. Okay, the measurable performance, it's not just opening a dispensary, it is a measurable social performance that is in line or that is coherent with our vision, mission and philosophy. So what are we doing? And that becomes the managerial perspective. Social responsibility of multinationals. Different contexts require different things to be done. We will talk about this in later lectures. Okay. From a relational perspective, it's not only the output and input, it's the relationship. Are we nice to the people around us? Do we give them, do we have a good relationship? How do they view us? Corporate global citizenship, the stakeholder approach, do we take their interests into account? It's not only giving them free medicines and being done with it. You come with a card, you get the medicine, you're just a number in our books and we are just a place where you can get cheaper medicines. No, it's the actual one-on-one relationship or the actual relationship of the community with the organization. So shareholders and stockholders are the people who have measurable financial stake in the company. When we talk about stakeholders, these people are affected by what the corporation does. They may or may not have a financial interest in the company. They may or may not be able to influence the performance of the company, but they are the ones who are being affected by it. So when we talk about the stakeholder approach, we feel that, you know, when we talk about the relational perspective, from a relational perspective, the organization actually tries to be a part of the society it's in. It's not only legal compliance, it's not only having something tangible, visible in a place in towards fulfilling their responsibility. It's actual, genuine, integrated kind of relationship with the society that they have. So the society really views them as part of it. Okay. Now, facets of stakeholder theory. There are two primary facets that have been proposed. There are two primary facets of stakeholder theory that have been proposed. One is the convergent stakeholder theory and the divergent stakeholder theory. The divergent stakeholder theory was proposed, but I couldn't find any literature after the proposal, but I still thought that you should see it, because that is one more way of viewing the stakeholder theory and what it does for CSR, or how it integrates with CSR. So let's see what these are. Now, the convergent stakeholder theory was proposed by Jones and Wicks in 1999. The managerial maxim is that managers should strive to create and maintain mutually trusting and cooperative relationships with corporate stakeholders. So there should be a reciprocal, synergistic kind of relationship with the stakeholders, and there should be cooperation, and that is the managerial maxim. So people, you know, the ideas, the vision, the thinking, the philosophy should converge. The philosophies of the stakeholders of the firm should converge to a mutually acceptable cooperative form of social responsibility. That is the managerial maxim. The normative core is that relationships characterized by mutual trust and cooperation are morally desirable. The normative core is that relationships characterized by mutual trust and cooperation are morally desirable. So if there is trust between the firm and the community, if there is cooperation, if they try very hard to cooperate with each other, then that becomes appealing, that becomes right to both parties. So that becomes acceptable because it is right to do it. So that becomes right for both parties, and so this is morally desirable. Supporting instrumental theory, firms whose managers establish and maintain mutually trusting and cooperative relationships with their stakeholders will achieve competitive advantage over those whose managers do not. This convergent theory is supported by an instrumental theory. Instrumental theory says that if you do X, you will achieve Y. So firms whose managers establish and maintain these kinds of relationships with their stakeholders will achieve competitive advantage over those whose managers do not. If you do the right thing, you will get this kind of an advantage, you will get competitive advantage, your firm will do better, your firm will perform better than the people who don't establish these kinds of mutually trusting and cooperative relationships. Okay. Divergent stakeholder theory, the proposal here is they acknowledge that there is more than one way to be effective in stakeholder management. There is more than one vision for creating value, for what consequences count as valuable. So we acknowledge that people will have divergent views. We don't need to converge on a single philosophy. We don't need to converge on our thoughts. We don't need to converge on our views on stakeholder management. There are several ways, and all these ways lead to stakeholder management. Why? Because there are different stakeholders with conflicting interests. We had talked about this earlier also. There are different types of stakeholders, and their interests could be conflicting with each other. So, how do you justify a company that maybe cans tuna fish, for example? Tuna is very popular in the Western countries. So, the job of the company is to can tuna fish. Now, there are special interest groups that say that tuna should not be killed. Tuna is a big fish, and with one fish, there's large volumes of cannibal tuna or processed tuna that can be produced. But special interest groups working for the prevention of cruelty to tuna or to fish say that you shouldn't be killing tuna anymore. What do? Your organization's job is to do that. So, you say no, we'll just catch free tuna from deep seas. We will not, we will make sure that we don't harm the fish. Of course, you're killing it. We will make sure that we don't use any illegal means. We will make sure we don't go into waters that are protected, where tuna is protected. We will go into the free seas where there are large volumes of tuna available. So, we'll catch the fish and we'll catch limited quantities. All that is fine. But where do you draw the line? You can't keep everybody happy. There will be somebody who will be saying, no, you shouldn't be doing this. So, that is what the divergent theory says, that it's not necessary to converge on the same vision, on the same method of doing things. We can satisfy stakeholders through different means. The requirement of this theory is that we need to encourage divergent views and discard the views that are. We need to encourage conversation that encourages these views regarding the diversity of stakeholders, the conflicting interests of stakeholders, and still managing stakeholders with these conflicting interests, and discard views that are not useful, that are not simple, and that do not show how it is possible to live better. So, unnecessary discussion should be discarded, but the discussion that focuses on celebrating diversity in views, that focuses on celebrating the diversity in the ways in which we can satisfy our stakeholders should be encouraged. Okay. Now, types of stakeholder theories. Stakeholder theories have been grouped into three broad categories. The first is the descriptive stakeholder theory, which describes how organizations manage or interact with stakeholders. So, these theories are talking about how organizations deal with stakeholders, how do they manage them, how do they keep them satisfied. Normative stakeholder theory prescribes how organizations ought to treat their stakeholders. They focus on the definitions of right and wrong. They say this is the right thing to do. Descriptive is you take status quo and you describe it in great detail. Normative says this is the right thing to do, this is what you must do to satisfy your stakeholders, to maintain these relationships with your stakeholders. And instrumental theories, the group of theories that talk about instrumental aspects of stakeholder theory, say if you want to maximize shareholder value, you should pay attention to key stakeholders. Why? Because the ultimate goal of any profit making organization is to make as much money as possible for the people who have invested in the organization, so that they get the maximum output with as little input as possible. They give in something, you work so efficiently that their returns are maximized. So, in order to do that, one must pay attention to key stakeholders. And who are these key stakeholders? People who can influence how the company functions, who can influence profits, who can influence processes. We talked about stakeholders who have influence. So, these are the instrumental theories. So, there are three broad categories under which the discussion on stakeholder theory of CSR is going on. Okay. So, this is, please try and think of examples. This is another homework for you. When you listen to this lecture, I suggest you start a topic on the forum where you list, okay, so and so company is indulging, or so and so this type of activity falls, or this type of theory, sorry, falls under descriptive stakeholder theories. This type of this particular theory falls under normative stakeholder theories. This particular theory of CSR falls under instrumental theories. And if you find something new that doesn't fall under any of these, please let us know. I'm sure there's lots of research going on. Maybe there is something, there may be some theories where this overlap is there. So we could discuss those also. But just look for these examples. And so when we talk about theories, we've till now been talking about what theories are, what these stakeholder theories are. Now with this discussion, there is also a lot of discussion going on what these theories appear to the critics, and there is a clarification that was given by Phillips, Freeman and Wicks in 2003, and the paper is called What Stakeholder Theory is Not. And I'll give you the reference of this paper. It's a very nice paper, and it talks about what stakeholder theory appears to be or is being perceived but it's not. Stakeholder theory is not an excuse for managerial opportunism. It is not a way of extracting the maximum benefit out of the stakeholders. It is not an excuse for, in the name of satisfying all stakeholders, we are trying to make excuses for not performing as much as we can because we are trying to keep everybody happy. That is not the purpose of stakeholder theory. It is not unable to provide a sufficiently specific objective function for the corporation. So critics say that, okay, you're saying you keep this person happy, but what is the objective function of the company? Stakeholder theory does not confound the specific objective of the company. It does not try to blur the specific objective of the company. It just asks people to open up their minds to the possibilities. It asks practitioners and theorists and people interested in how the company is satisfying the communities around it to open their eyes and see what all or how many people could be affected by it, how many groups, how many communities could be affected by the working of the organization. The other criticism here is that it is primarily concerned with the distribution of financial outputs. That is not the case. That is what the proponents of stakeholder theory say. They say that it's not about distributing your social responsibility budget among all stakeholders. That is not the purpose. There are ways of satisfying stakeholders without giving them financial benefits. Also, you establish a good relationship with them. You make sure you don't harm the environment. You make sure that you set up facilities. Again, no financial responsibility. You set up facilities that can be used by your employees as well as the community. So there's no additional investment. It's not all about, doling out extra money in the hope of satisfying people who can use that money. That is not the purpose. Then stakeholder theory is not insistent on treating all stakeholders equally. There is a difference between equal treatment and equitable treatment. So it doesn't say that everybody needs to be treated equally, but it does, different people will have different stake in the organization. They will be affected by the organization differently. They will want the organization to do different things for them, and so they have different expectations from the organization. So stakeholder theory doesn't say that you need to be treated, you need to treat everybody equally. You need to, all it says is that please acknowledge the existence of these stakeholders and find out how you can satisfy them. And satisfaction of different stakeholders may or may not require equal inputs. So that is what the defenders of stakeholder theory say to this criticism. Okay. Stakeholder theory is not insistent on changes to current law. They don't want changes to current law. They say you keep the law as it is, at least acknowledge that there are other stakeholders, there are people, there are special interest groups who could be affected by what the organization is doing. Stakeholder theory is not socialism, and it does not refer to the entire economy. We talked about social issues and stakeholder issues. We talked about CSR and social work. We didn't use these terms, but we have talked about stakeholder issues and social issues in one of the previous lectures, and that is what the people defending, or the researchers defending stakeholder theory say. They say it's not about addressing the needs of the entire society. It's about identifying who can be affected by the organization and addressing the needs of those as best as possible, while fulfilling the commitments that the organization has to the people who have invested in it financially. Okay, so it's about maintaining that balance between your responsibility to society, to people who could be affected by what you do, and also making money for the people who have invested in the organization. It is not a comprehensive moral doctrine. It doesn't tell you what is right and what is not right. Yes, stakeholder theory is based on the definitions of right and wrong. It is good, of definitions of good and bad. It is good to keep the interests of everybody affected by the organization in mind. Yes, that is the basic premise, but it's not, it's not saying that this is the only way to go. So it's not prescribing a moral doctrine. It's not only applicable on, it's not applicable only to corporations. Stakeholder theory is that's the last criticism here, that the stakeholder theory, please focus on the screen. Can you? Yeah, thank you. So the stakeholder theory is not applicable only to corporations. The stakeholder theory is applicable to any organization that is where management is going on. So wherever people are being affected by our work, we should keep their interests in mind. So it's applicable to a variety of situations, not only to profit-making organizations. And these are the critiques and responses to stakeholder theory, and with that we wind up our discussion on stakeholder theory and CSR. So we will discuss a little bit more, but then we were talking about stakeholder theory, so I thought this would be really tying in very well with what we had been talking about so far. So I think that is all we have time for in this lecture. We will continue with some more discussion on this in the next class. Thank you very much for listening.